My name is Marcus Thompson, and I've spent my life upholding the law, until the day I was forced to confront an injustice that cut closer to home than anything I had ever experienced. I'm a police officer, and I've arrested criminals, de-escalated dangerous situations, and maintained order in our community. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the moment when imposters, masquerading as HOA enforcers, decided to treat my own son as if he were a criminal. This is my story, a first-person account of that fateful day, told in every raw, unfiltered detail. I remember the morning vividly. The sun had barely risen over our quiet suburban neighborhood, its golden light casting long shadows on freshly mowed lawns and neat hedges. There was an air of calm that belied the chaos that was soon to erupt. I had just finished reading the morning paper in the kitchen when I heard a commotion outside. The sound of raised voices and frantic shouts pricked at my senses, and instinctively I knew something was terribly wrong. My son, Jamal, was out enjoying a rare moment of freedom. Like many teenagers, he found solace in the simple joy of skateboarding around the neighborhood. That morning, he was riding along the familiar streets, the wind in his hair and a carefree smile on his face, a picture of youthful liberty. But as he cruised down our block, he unwittingly crossed paths with two individuals who fancied themselves the ultimate arbiters of neighborhood order. I soon learned that these men, calling themselves Todd and Mike, were self-appointed enforcers of the Homeowners Association's rules, a role they had invented for themselves without any real authority. They wore mismatched uniforms that reeked of cheap knockoffs, their badges nothing more than printed replicas taped on with desperate zeal. I didn't have time to think as I heard Todd shout, "Hey kid, you can't just be skating on private property. This isn't a playground. This is a neighborhood with rules." In a matter of seconds, Jamal was confronted by these men. His confusion and defiance were palpable as he replied, "I live here. This is my home, and I'm just riding by." Before I could react, Todd produced a flimsy piece of paper, insisting that Jamal produce some form of identification. Mike, with a smirk plastered on his face, chimed in, "You better have some ID, son. We can't let anyone loiter here without proof of residency." Their words were laced with an authority they believed was theirs to wield, a power derived not from law, but from a twisted interpretation of community guidelines. Neighbors began to gather, murmuring in disbelief as Jamal's skateboard clattered to the ground and he was roughly seized by these imposters. His voice, filled with panic and hurt, rang out as he called for help. "Mom, Dad, let me go, please." I rushed outside, my heart pounding with a mix of fury and dread. The sight that greeted me was beyond belief. My own son, in his element and yet so vulnerable, being treated like a delinquent by men who had no right to enforce anything. I didn't waste a second. I slid into my cruiser, the siren already growing louder in my mind, and sped toward the commotion. As I arrived at the scene, I saw Todd and Mike corralling Jamal near our driveway, their faces twisted in a mixture of self-importance and nervousness. Without hesitation, I stepped out of my car and demanded, "Stop right there. What in the world is going on?" Their confident facade faltered in the presence of true authority. Todd tried to muster an explanation. "Sir, we're with the HOA security team. This young man was found trespassing in a restricted area." My mind raced at the absurdity of his words. Trespassing? On his own front yard? The very idea defied logic. I replied sharply, "Trespassing? On your own property? Explain that to me." My tone brooked no argument, and the crowd that had gathered fell silent, sensing the gravity of the moment. Jamal, still shaken but brave in his own way, managed to speak through his distress. "Dad, they said I was breaking the rules, but I'm just skateboarding in my own neighborhood. I don't understand why they're treating me like a criminal." His words cut through me like a knife. It wasn't just about a misinterpreted set of rules. It was about a deliberate abuse of power, an overreach by individuals who believed they could enforce their own twisted version of order. I could see the fear in his eyes, and that fear ignited a resolve in me that burned hotter than any anger I had felt in the line of duty. I demanded that they produce their credentials. With a swagger that quickly dissolved into panic, Todd fumbled to unfold a piece of paper that was supposed to be his certification from the HOA. I couldn't help but let a note of sarcasm slip into my voice as I said, "Certified? Let's see that certification. And don't tell me it's printed on your home printer." The words hung in the air, charged with the weight of truth. Todd stammered, unable to provide a satisfactory answer, while Mike shifted his gaze nervously toward the gathering crowd. It was in that moment that I knew I was dealing with imposters, charlatans who had no business wielding any authority over anyone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my official badge, its gleam unmistakable in the harsh light of day. "Listen," I said firmly, "HOA rules do not grant you the power to arrest anyone, especially not on my watch." My voice resonated with the authority of someone who had dedicated his life to upholding the law, and it left no room for debate. In that instant, the power dynamic shifted. The crowd, previously murmuring in confusion and uncertainty, now watched with a mixture of relief and vindication. Real law enforcement had arrived, and the charade was over. I immediately radioed in for backup, ensuring that every man and woman in uniform nearby knew what was unfolding on our street. "This is Thompson," I said into the radio, my tone all business. "I need immediate assistance at my residence. We have individuals impersonating law enforcement. Over." The crackle of the radio confirmed that help was on the way, and soon additional patrol cars arrived. The fake enforcers' bravado dissolved completely as real officers, in proper uniforms and with genuine authority, surrounded them. In a calm yet uncompromising voice, I told Todd, "I suggest you both come with me without any more theatrics. You're under arrest for impersonating law enforcement and violating civil rights." His face, once filled with false confidence, now contorted with fear and desperation. Mike's muttered protestations, "We just wanted to enforce the rules," fell on deaf ears. I couldn't allow their misguided attempts at control to go unchallenged. "Rules enforced through lies and intimidation will always be met with the truth," I said. "Your certifications mean nothing when compared to the real authority of the law." With that, I watched as my fellow officers took Todd and Mike into custody, the weight of justice finally settling over the scene. As the situation de-escalated, I knelt beside Jamal, who was still trembling from the ordeal. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Skate as much as you want, son, but remember, real officers will always be on your side." His tentative smile, though tinged with lingering shock, was enough to fortify my resolve. It was a reminder that every day I donned the uniform was not just about fighting crime, but also about protecting those who mattered most. In the hours and days that followed, our neighborhood buzzed with talk of the incident. Neighbors recorded statements on their phones and shared whispered conversations about the overreach of authority by those who should have known better. I attended community meetings where residents expressed both outrage and relief, a complex mixture of emotions that underscored the deep-seated trust they placed in genuine law enforcement. One community leader, Ms. Ramirez, spoke passionately about the need for accountability, saying, "We must stand together." Today we witnessed that authority must be earned and not falsely claimed. Her words resonated deeply with everyone present, echoing the sentiment that justice was a right, not a privilege to be manipulated by opportunists. That night, alone in the quiet of my home, I sat at my desk with a journal in hand. The dim glow of a desk lamp illuminated the pages as I struggled to put into words the swirl of emotions that had overtaken me. I had taken an oath to protect and serve, and that oath was more than a promise. It was a commitment to ensuring that no one in our community ever felt unsafe, not even in their own home. My thoughts drifted to a framed photo of Jamal, smiling and full of life, a stark contrast to the terror he had experienced that day. It pained me to think that my son had been treated as anything less than a cherished member of our family, a victim of a system that had allowed power to be abused by those without accountability. As I penned down my reflections, I vowed to never let such an injustice slip by unnoticed. I resolved to speak out not only for my son, but for every person who had been wronged by the misuse of authority. I wrote, "Today, I witnessed a profound betrayal of trust. It is not enough to simply enforce rules. we must enforce them with integrity and compassion. No one should be subject to the whims of self-appointed enforcers, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that our community remains a safe haven for all. In the days that followed, the fallout from the incident spurred conversations far beyond our quiet street. Social media lit up with accounts of similar overreaches, and the story of fake HOA enforcers quickly spread, prompting other communities to re-examine their own regulations. I found myself fielding calls from concerned citizens and fellow officers alike, all eager to know how such a breach of authority could have happened, and more importantly, how it might be prevented in the future. I took every opportunity to address the issue publicly, urging residents to remain vigilant and to question any display of power that did not come with proper accountability. Authority is not something to be claimed by those who can print a badge. I would say it is earned through service, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to justice. I made it clear that while rules were essential for maintaining order, they should never be a tool for harassment or oppression. My experience that day had underscored the fragile balance between order and abuse, a balance that could only be maintained through transparency, respect, and a willingness to hold even those in positions of power accountable. Looking back, I realized that this incident was a turning point not only for my family but for our entire community. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of power and the dangers of unchecked authority. It reminded me that being a cop is about more than just enforcing the law. It's about protecting the dignity and rights of every individual, regardless of their age, background, or circumstance. It reinforced my belief that our duty as law enforcement officers is to serve with honor, integrity, and a deep-seated respect for the people we are sworn to protect. Today, as I stand before you, I do so with a heart that is both heavy with the memory of that day and hopeful for a future where justice prevails over tyranny. My son, Jamal, continues to skate down our neighborhood streets, a symbol of resilience and youthful defiance in the face of injustice. Every time I see him maneuver around a corner or laugh with his friends, I am reminded that our fight is not just against crime, but against any form of abuse of power. I share my story in the hope that it will spark a broader conversation about accountability in our communities. Let my experience serve as a reminder. No one should ever feel unsafe in their own home or targeted by those who claim authority without earning it. We all have a role to play in safeguarding our rights, demanding transparency, and ensuring that our leaders, whether they wear a badge or a makeshift uniform, are held accountable for their actions. If there's one lesson I want you to take away from all of this, it's that vigilance and unity are our greatest strengths. Speak up when you see injustice, stand together with your neighbors, and never let anyone undermine the dignity of another human being. In our world, true power belongs to the people, and it is only through our collective voice that we can ensure justice is not just an ideal, but a reality. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to look closely at the systems in your own communities, to question when authority seems to be overstepping its bounds, and to always remember that real strength lies in the courage to stand up for what's right. Let's work together to build a future where every person is respected, every voice is heard, and justice is a promise kept by all. Remember, if you've ever witnessed or experienced an abuse of power, share your story. It's in our shared experiences that we find the strength to demand change. Let's hold accountable those who misuse their power, and let's celebrate the resilience of every community member who fights for a better tomorrow. Marcus Thompson, officer, father, and advocate for true justice. In the weeks following the incident, the repercussions continued to ripple through our community. The HOA board was forced to answer some tough questions, and residents demanded transparency in how rules were enforced. It turned out that Todd and Mike had taken it upon themselves to act as enforcers without any official backing from the HOA. Their fabricated authority had been based on intimidation and arrogance, and their actions had finally caught up with them. The Homeowners Association scrambled to distance itself from a scandal, with the board president issuing a public statement. We do not condone the unauthorized enforcement of HOA rules by any individual. We are launching an internal review to ensure that no such incidents occur in the future. But for many of us, those words rang hollow. The damage had already been done, and trust was not something that could be restored with a simple statement. Jamal, though shaken by the experience, had gained a new perspective. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set over our neighborhood, he turned to me and said, "Dad, I never thought something like this would happen to me. I mean, you always talk about justice and doing the right thing, but I didn't realize how easily people could twist authority to serve themselves." His words struck a chord. "That's why we fight back," I told him. "Not with fists, but with truth. We call out abuse, we demand accountability, and we make sure people like Todd and Mike don't get to make the rules just because they feel like it." As word of the incident spread, it wasn't just our neighborhood that took notice. Local news outlets picked up the story, and soon it was being discussed in town hall meetings and police briefings. The question at the center of it all was simple yet profound. How do we ensure that authority is used responsibly and not as a weapon of intimidation? I found myself invited to speak at a community policing forum, where officers, local leaders, and residents gathered to address concerns about power dynamics in neighborhoods. As I stood before the crowd, I realized that my experience with Jamal had become more than just a personal battle. It had become a rallying point for a larger conversation about governance, respect, and the fine line between order and oppression. Real authority, I told them, comes from service, from integrity, not from a fake badge or a printed piece of paper. The moment we allow people to assume power without oversight, we put our communities at risk. The law exists to protect, not to intimidate. It is our duty to make sure it remains that way. The forum led to actionable steps. The City Council proposed stricter regulations on HOA enforcement, ensuring that any security measures implemented had to be overseen by licensed professionals, not self-appointed enforcers. A neighborhood watch program was formed, where real officers worked alongside residents to foster a relationship built on trust rather than fear. For my part, I knew this was just the beginning. My experience had opened my eyes to a deeper issue, one that went beyond just my family and my street. It was about ensuring that no child, no homeowner, no innocent person had to fear those who claimed authority without accountability. Jamal continued skateboarding, his confidence gradually returning. One afternoon, as he rode past the same driveway where he had been stopped weeks earlier, he looked over at me with a knowing smile. "Guess the street's not so restricted anymore, huh?" I chuckled. "Not for you, son. Not ever again." Because justice isn't just about stopping crime. It's about making sure the right people are standing up for what's right. And as long as I had a badge on my chest and a voice to speak up, I wasn't going to let anyone forget that. This is more than just my story. It's a reminder that real power belongs to those who use it wisely. And if we stand together, we can ensure that justice isn't just a word. It's a promise we keep for every member of our community. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe and share with friends.